Well, my name's Joel. I served in the Marine Corps from '99 to '03 as an artilleryman, 1st Battalion, 11th Marine Regiment, out of Camp Pendleton, California. I remember being home on leave Christmas. Everybody was asking about that potential. Would I go? Would I not go? What was going to happen? And I would still tell my family and friends, my girlfriend, that nothing's going to come of this. This is just America carrying a big stick. There's not much here, really. There's no way we could go this one alone. This is too big. But then I got back from leave, and that decision had been made. So we got back, and we basically packed our bags. And most guys flew over. We were one of the last units to arrive in Kuwait. My feeling still was that we wouldn't go this alone, that we would all be staged, and that would be the end of the show of force. That would be the oomph in diplomacy to kick things into real action, real movement, a lot more momentum, but it wasn't to be. So we spent a couple of weeks in the desert in Kuwait, basically just training. That's all we did. It was the same as any desert in California. So the weapons of mass destruction argument helped me settle into what I was about to be a part of, and we were all pretty nervous about that. Trusting the gear that we'd been issued. Is it going to work? In the gas chamber back on Camp Pendleton is one place. The munitions that would be used on us are going to be much different and much more severe than what we train with. So we were all pretty nervous. I think sometimes I shaved my face 3 times a day just to make sure the seal on the gas mask, I could trust that at least. Not necessarily the garments that I was wearing, but at least my gas mask would stay on my face. We were issued drugs to give one another in case we had to help someone through an attack like that. If he was exposed, we could help each other through that. So that was definitely weighed heavy on our minds. We came up from Kuwait. We were the eastern flank of the advancing forces, and there was a large division, as I recall, in the southeast of Iraq, and we were in the end to the west of their retreat, their avenues of retreat. And so for 4 or 5 days we ended up in some fairly heavy fighting. Mostly it was thought against those retreating forces. The notion that most folks have about artillery is that they're back from the front. We can shoot 30 miles away. We can shoot from 30 miles, and that's a good ways away when you get right down to it, especially with a military that has no air power, that has no functioning long-range weaponry. But we weren't. We moved so quickly that we at times competed with the infantry for that frontline ground. And being so close to the infantry, I saw a lot of their work and was in a few firefights. Saw Iraqis die. Saw a lot of buses. One of the tactics of what little resistance there was, but one of the tactics of those fighters was to commandeer buses with civilians on them, Iraqi civilians, drive at high speed down the roads, shooting RPGs at the Americans in front of them, thinking that we would not fire upon them because there were civilians on the bus. Well, unfortunately, the rules of engagement are very clear. That bus is to be destroyed, regardless of whether there's one combatant on that bus hiding behind 50 civilians or 50 combatants on that bus. That bus is to be destroyed. And so we would see the after effects of those engagements. So I saw a lot of dead children, a lot of dead women, dead seniors, burned out buses, and it was all very fresh. And then you go through the cities that we had just destroyed, just a few hours before or the night before. And that was difficult to see, actually. All these homes, marketplaces, storefronts, businesses, just rubble. There was little resistance in the end. When you think about taking over a country, what kind of resistance will there be from an army that was possibly a serious threat to us? It ended up not being. In 3.5 weeks, we accomplished the mission. And we know that that's not the case. But we settled into Baghdad and began making security patrols. So things obviously kind of calmed down a little bit for us. But we didn't find the weapons, we didn't find the resistance. We found people fairly excited, or at least expressing that. That may have been certainly just a mask. When an army is rolling across your front doorstep, what else are you going to do but look happy that they're there? Why would you throw a bottle at them? You wouldn't do that. It just doesn't make sense. So a lot of that excitement may simply have been to appease the American invaders. But there were certainly some folks. I remember on one patrol, same day, two elderly people, a woman and a man, at different times, unrelated, came up to me and shook my hand. The woman actually gave me a hug, and I was surprised by that. I didn't think she would be so personal. I didn't think she would actually invade my space that way. I had a gun. But she did. She pressed the gun, and the gun was pressed in between her breasts and my chest. I found that, I noticed that at the time. I thought about that, how odd that was. This heartfelt hug from this woman, yet this loaded M16 in between all of that. That was pretty bizarre. But she thanked me because she said she hadn't seen her son in 20 years. He was forced into the army, and she saw him today. And that morning, actually. And then just a little while later, an elderly man came up and shook my hand. And he said he heard from his son a few days before that for the first time in 10 years, 15 years. And so I had some pretty mixed emotions at the time. And there was a small shepherd boy. God, he couldn't have been 12. Had a little shepherd's crook. A flock of maybe 15, 20 goats. And just a small drainage ditch on the northern side of this field. And we were probably we were on the southern side of the field. So we might have been 100 yards away from him. Just to the south of where he was sitting. And he didn't move, and we were shooting over his head. And he sat there the whole time we occupied this position.